Well, welcome to the webinar here today, provided by Armanino and Solver. We're going to sit here for a couple of minutes, just wait for some of your friends and colleagues to join, and then we'll start the presentation. Well, welcome everyone to this webinar today. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. Armanino and Solver are excited to be partnering for this session today. And I just want to do a quick audio check. Can you hear me okay, Sophia?
Yes.
Great. So our webinar topic for today is the building blocks to transform your nonprofit FP&A process. We've got a lot of great content that we're going to be going through here. And let's just dive right in. Next slide. Little technical difficulty, and we'll get going in just a second. Tracy, are we having some?
Sorry about that, guys. Yes, I am. Just 1 second. Sorry, everybody.
We'll be patient, and this will give the attendees more chance to get in here.
Yep.
The list is still growing.
Perfect.
Hey, Tracy, if you click on that screen when you're in full screen and just hit the next button, it should go.
Can you guys see it now?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay, let's do a restart. So I know we've never, with all the online things we've been doing over the last 18 months, we've all had these bumps in the road before. So, well, welcome again. And on the screen here, we have our agenda. I'll do some quick introductions of our presenters today, and then some great content regarding the review, some of the impact of nonprofits and the market trend we're seeing today. Then we're going to dive into a little bit on a comprehensive demo that Todd's going to provide for us on planning, budgeting, and modeling specific for nonprofits. So you'll see some of his presentation is very built for organizations like yourself. And then we'll have time at the end definitely for some Q&A. I will say if you have any questions as we're going through here, please go ahead and put those in the chat, and we'll hit those when we have transition points and breaks. So next slide. Well, I'll introduce our presenters today. I'm Terry Ginley. I'm the Vice President of Partnership Development. I'm fortunate to work very closely with Armanino as one of our great partners, and I appreciate them allowing us to host this today and for having their experts here. Next up will be Brenda. Brenda's a CPA, and works on, focuses almost exclusively on nonprofit client engagement. And then the presenter today for the software will be Todd Bowlesby. And Todd has extensive experience with FP&A, or you may hear it sometimes called CPM software, and has been a great partner with Solver as well. So I'll jump in one more slide here. If you want to move forward. So we're going to provide just a little bit about Solver here on the front end, but then you'll see some information at the end. So it's basically Solver. If you look at the pictures up there and those titles, really those are the people that we work with and help empower them with data and knowledge. What we do is provide KPIs or key performance indicators via reporting, planning, and then dashboards. So really kind of all visibility across your organizations. And that's all in the cloud. So that kind of green box there is really all in the cloud. So can be picked up and used anywhere. And we'll talk about a little bit later in a second here, all the different types of data sources that can be brought into our solution. Might be payroll data as you're forecasting, your budgeting. Might be your ERP system. In many cases, it is to do your financial reporting. See if any CRM systems, might be a grant or a donation system. All of that can be reported on, and Todd will show a little bit about there. And just very quickly, I'll talk just briefly about our company, Solver. We have been in business a little over 20 years. We're a international company with over 140 employees around the world. And today we serve a little over 3,000 customers. And really the advantage we provide is a single cloud portal, which really provides one source of the truth. And really also the quick time to value. We're not going to spend months trying to get our solution up so you can get your financials and budgeting going. We'll get it done very quickly. The apps, we can see them listed there. I'm going to let Todd do the talking on that one because he'll be showing those, and I think it's a better way to consume that information. So if you want to go to the next slide, and I think we want to introduce here Brenda. So Brenda, one quick question for you before you dive into your session. Solver, you saw all those different data sources on the bottom here. And if I look at your slide here, wow, there's a lot of different type of data sources that nonprofit organizations may be pulling in or want to report or analyze. So, passing that off to you, Brenda, what's your thoughts, or what are you seeing out there?
Well, as you can see here, this is kind of our nonprofit technology stack across all of these 6 different categories. What are the solutions that we're seeing most commonly in our small to mid-sized nonprofits? And there's a lot of data. And when you have a lot of data moving around like that, there often becomes a discussion as what is the single source of truth? Where am I going to go to get everything? And how can I pull it all together if not everything is flowing through my ERP? So that's one of the things we're going to talk today, is because finance and controllers today have a really tough job pulling all that data together to form a cohesive picture for their board, for their management team, and for their external stakeholders. So this is just we didn't want to get you a really scary slide, but this is just a sampling of some of the various data sources we're seeing commonly in nonprofits today. All right, so for those, thanks to everybody for joining us today. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Armanino, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of who we are and what we do. So we are one of the top 25 largest accounting and consulting firms here in the United States. We do have team members in 22 of our states, and we're expanding. We're actually merging with another firm coming up on August 1st, which will give us a big presence in St. Louis as well. So we're really excited about that. But our purpose as an accounting and consulting firm is really to be very innovative and to help our clients be innovative as well. Nonprofits tend to be a little bit behind the curve when it comes to innovation, because in order to get those donation dollars and those fundraising dollars for technology, there has to be a kind of general acceptance first. And so we really work with over 1,500, I think, nonprofits across all of our lines of service: audit, tax, outsource finance and accounting, and technology implementations. One of the things, I'm not going to go through all of our recognition and awards, but things we're most proud about is being a B Corporation. We also have our Armanino Foundation. So not only are we working with a lot of nonprofits, but we also are a nonprofit. And I think that's really important in the way we approach working with our nonprofit clients. Next slide. As I mentioned, there's a lot of complexity in finance and accounting today, and it spans more than just producing a report, although that is definitely one of the key outputs and really the tangible thing that everybody outside of the accounting team has to rely on in terms of what it is that we do all day. And so the reporting always has to be top notch, because if you ever issue reports or have had errors or data issues in your reporting, it can create a lack of trust in the numbers across the firm. And that can be really difficult to regain that trust once people have lost that. If they can't rely on their reporting to be correct, what can they rely on? Obviously, for nonprofits, compliance is a big issue as well. All of the systems that we design, we always think about how are the ways that you need to report both internally to do your tracking, fund monitoring, releases from restriction, reporting to donors, as well as your compliance for both financial and tax reporting. And Todd will go through some of those reports a little later on in his demo. Obviously, technology is a big component on it, but there's no sense in investing in technology if you don't have the right people in the right roles. And so we take a 360 approach to our consulting engagements with our nonprofit clients to make sure we're looking at all 4 of these areas. And below down there, we have segregated our nonprofit practice into 6 different areas, and we do have leaders throughout the firm that are assigned to each one of those. So we've got experts in all of the various nonprofit sub-niches. Next slide, Therese. And before we get into this, I would love to see this chat light up today. If you could just let me know what you're currently using as your financial reporting, budgeting, and planning tool, it would be really helpful to know where you guys are coming from so we can make sure that we address that. My guess is that a lot of you are still using Excel. So go ahead and write in the chat, if you can, what you are using today for financial reporting, budgeting, and planning. Give you just a minute here. Tracy, I think the default is to send the chat to the presenter only. Are you getting the responses here?
Right, we have a lot of answers for QuickBooks and Excel.
Awesome, thanks so much. Not surprised by either of those answers. I was figuring most people were currently using Excel and then somehow kind of marrying, exporting data and then marrying up your budget to actuals for reporting there, or putting your budget into QuickBooks and doing the reporting there once it's done. That's great, thank you. So let's dive right in. Before we dive into Solver, I wanted to kind of take a look at what is, you can go to the next slide, what the impact of the current environment is on nonprofits as a whole. As we all know, this year has been a wild ride, and as businesses and business leaders navigate the fallout and the complexities of the pandemic, everyone's looking for guideposts to assist them in making the right decisions. So we've put together a framework to provide kind of actionable assistance wherever you are on this continuum to help you understand where you are, how to move to the next one, and what to expect in kind of subsequent stages. And we created this kind of like for the pandemic, and I would say this is actually a repeating cycle. Anytime something happens, some critical thing, it could be a loss of a funding source, it could be a loss of critical leadership. We obviously have a great frame of reference with the pandemic, but I really think that this continuum repeats over and over again throughout the life cycle of a business. And each, recognizing where you are is critical, because each stage requires a different thought about forecasting and modeling about where the organization is and how you're going to get to the next stage. All right, so overall, crisis management, not a surprise to anybody that I've listed that here. I think being able to do those what if scenarios, what if I get PPP? What if I don't get PPP? What if we furlough our staff? Or what if we do a layoffs? All of those things are things we've all had to wrestle with over the last year. Modeling out different revenue diversification or revenue loss in some cases. A lot of our nonprofit organizations working in performing arts and museum space have been closed for much of the last 18 months. And that has been really difficult, I think, for people to think about what's going to happen without having a robust what if scenario planning ability. Can also help you model out mergers and acquisitions. I think this has not been a big area in nonprofits in the past. I've been working with nonprofits for the better part of 20 years, and I've only seen a handful of mergers and acquisitions during that time. In this year, I've seen so many and heard of so many more that are in the works because people are wanting to consolidate those shared services, that back office, to eliminate the duplications of those services there. For cost management, I have never heard a nonprofit that doesn't want to decrease their costs to deliver their program. Decrease costs, increase revenue, improve ROI, and get that there. So the cost management is a key part as well. And then automation of procure to pay. So that would be your purchasing cycle. Can you batch things? And looking at that whole process is helpful within the concept of a CPM, a corporate performance management system. Obviously, technology, we've all moved to the virtual world at this point. I'm looking forward to getting back in the office for sure, as I bet a lot of you are as well. Nothing is able to replace the in-person connection. But we're also seeing some exciting things in terms of artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotic process automation. Those are kind of sexy finance titles these days. And it's really interesting to hear about all of the ways that we as nonprofits can leverage technology, not necessarily to eliminate jobs and costs, but to automate those routine things that we're doing that aren't necessarily adding value. Journal entries, posting journal entries doesn't add value to the business. It's a necessary evil, but it's looking back. It's not very forward thinking, and thinking about how can you leverage your staff if they weren't busy posting journal entries. Could they be analyzing that data and looking for the patterns and seeing where we could make micro improvements that will have a lasting impact over a long term? We've also seen the creation of a chief data analytics officer role for that analyzing the data often goes hand in hand with the director of finance. And unfortunately, we have also seen a big increase in data breaches, phishing attacks, ransomware, and things of the like, because people have been using their equipment at home. They're not in an office. They may not have a VPN or other secure way to access their organization data. So that's been a big issue as well. And then, of course, value and pricing. All nonprofits are always looking to get great value out of everything that they invest in, because if you could invest $1 more, people are usually going to choose to invest in either programs to deliver more value to your constituents, or into development to get more revenue in the door. And so if you're a nonprofit that's looking to invest in technology, you really want to see that value and that return on investment show dividends, because you want to be doing that fiduciary responsibility to steward the nonprofit's money in the most effective way possible. Next slide. So if you're thinking about embarking on an FP&A solution, it really all starts with the strategy. We always want to start with an assessment. Where are you today, and where are you trying to get? So you have to define those objectives, and then define that roadmap. How do you want to get there? What does it make sense to implement first? There is definitely an order if you're changing your entire technology stack, like we showed earlier in the slide deck. If you're changing that entire thing, there is an order to do things in which you wouldn't have to re-implement other technologies. So if you do it in the wrong order, it may end up costing you more in the long run, because you've got to re-implement and update solutions as additional solutions come on board and integrate into the larger ecosystem. This is also, you've noticed here, is a circle. It is a circle of continuous improvement. Once the implementation of the technology is implemented, you can't stop investing in it. You have to be constantly reassessing, is it still meeting the needs of the organization? Is it still going to allow me to report to my donors, my stakeholders, my board? And those are important questions that need to be answered before you go out and just buy a solution. Pardon me. Tracy, next slide. So depending on where you are, I think in terms of size, we do see different challenges. And so we wanted to kind of share about what are the things that you might want to be thinking about as you look forward, as you start to grow. We tried to put some of the guidelines in there to be able to give you things that you should be thinking about. For a small business under 10 million, that's kind of a guideline. You could be very small, you could be 11 million and still be considered small. It's going to vary. A medium business, again, not a hard and fast 10 to 50 million. But as you progress through this, we start to see different types of challenges that organizations face as they move from Excel and QuickBooks into a more standard FP&A solution. Next slide. And you can go ahead and build this whole thing out, Tracy. And this was really just to, again, give you a think about as you look at your evolution over time. When organizations start out, they're really doing the basic, which is you're doing a best guess. It's more reflective and reactive. You're thinking about what happened last month. What do we need to learn from that last month? There's not a lot of forward thinking. So you've got your annual plan, your monthly reporting, your budget versus actual, your statement of financial activities, your statement of financial position, cash flow, but you're primarily on spreadsheets there. As you move up into the moderate, we see organizations doing more frequent forecasting, not just the annual plan and maybe not just a mid-year forecast, but an update for a course correction at some point or repeatedly throughout the year. At this point, you're starting to develop the drivers of the business. How are these going to move through the financials? How, your KPIs. And there's definitely a thought process there reflecting back on those metrics. And here we start seeing people using what I would call advanced spreadsheets, where you've got 20 tab workbooks and you've maybe got some macros and some fancy formulas built in there. Also, the more advanced spreadsheets get, the more prone to errors they get. And this is usually where we see organizations start to think about, what kind of system do I need to move into? These spreadsheets are getting to be a little bit too much to maintain for me. So then we move into the advanced. And this is where we see clients are doing ongoing forecasting. They're leveraging other solutions. The second one, they have an automated integration. Pardon me. Between their ERP and other data sources and their FP&A or CPM solution. And this is really going to help you because you're no longer downloading into spreadsheets and analyzing in Excel or Microsoft Access. There's a lot more business engagement throughout the organization. And this is where you really need to consider a solution upgrade because you've got so many people involved in the planning process. What we always call it is you've got iterations and all of the access controls for all of the budgeting becomes onerous. And then ultimately, of course, you move into strategic. And this is the data visualization. You can see the impact of small changes on your budget and your plan. You're able to do sensitivity analysis for changes in donor giving or revenue streams. And you're asking the questions about how do we work together to make the organization more successful. So this is where you're really able to drive success through technology and support your CFO and the finance function in decision making. Next slide. Okay, so another kind of ladder showing you the things that we could benefit from a robust FP&A solution. It's really the real-time access to the business performance metrics, having that ongoing, not spreadsheet-based, which is always as of a point in time, and by the time it's been released, maybe it's 3 weeks after month-end close by the time you've closed the books, analyzed it, done all the reporting, made all the updates and changes, and now we're getting that data and it's 3 weeks old. In some organizations that are not high growth, that might be just fine for you. But if you are in a high growth or highly volatile environment, real-time access becomes so much more efficient. When you're talking about efficient use of time, analysis versus data gathering, it's kind of what I was alluding to at the beginning. If your people are not doing the data gathering, they have more time to actually analyze, impact, and review that data to turn that data into information that can be used for decision making throughout the organization. Having a robust FP&A solution can also help facilitate your strategic partnerships with department leaders throughout the organization. This kind of changes it from a top-down approach to a bottom-up approach, which allows everybody to feel more inclusive and able to be part of the process. And ultimately, we want to get to that proactive and strategic point where we're able to do that what if modeling and scenario planning versus being reactive to the current environment. And next slide. So this here at Armanino, these are some of the areas that we touch across corporate performance management for FP&A function. Budgeting, forecasting, business modeling, strategic planning, management reporting, financial analysis, capital planning, as well as technology implementation. So we've got experts and professionals that touch all of this. It's a lot. I'm not going to lie, it's a lot to do on yourself. I'm lucky enough to come from a nonprofit where we had a separate finance team from the accounting team, but I know many of you on the line today are probably filling both roles. And it's a lot to be both backward-looking from the accounting standpoint and forward-looking from the finance standpoint. So just wanted to share some of the areas that, if you're struggling, need a little additional help, these are some of the things that we would be able to help you with. And then lastly, and then we'll get into the demo here. So we got a screenshot of one of the dashboards that we'll show you in Solver. And really, the goal of a financial planning and analysis tool is to streamline your financial and budgeting process, to pull in the various information from all of your data sources to allow you to analyze, monitor, review information on a real-time basis instead of only periodically, monthly, quarterly, or at year end, and then to really allow you to beef up sorry, that finance function to be able to do that modeling and forecasting. I'll go ahead and pause there and see if there are any questions, and we will, oh, there's more. Let's go ahead and pause here, and we'll come back to this after the demo, Tracy.
Perfect. Thank you, Brenda. Todd, if you want to take it over here, I will pass on the screen.
Okay. All right, so you guys can see my screen now?
We can, thank you.
Excellent, thanks for the confirmation. Well, I'm echoing Brenda. Welcome, thanks for sharing your time with us today. Thought we would show you a little bit about Solver, give you a quick demo of the various areas of it. One of the things would be a question in my mind, being a former CFO and actually working with a lot of nonprofits myself, would be, why Solver? One of the reasons would be that the user interface for writing the reports and writing the input templates is all Excel based. Your end users experience what we're about to see and I'm going to show you today. But the report writer itself was purposefully built in Excel because we as finance and accounting folks, we just love our Excel, right? So we can easily create those reports, those input templates, and push them up into Solver here. The other reason would be there are a huge number of, I think the last time I heard was like 50 plus templates that are out of the box that you can utilize. So you can start basically with something that's pretty much 80% pre-built, pull that up in Excel, modify it to your heart's desire, and then re-upload it and you're up and running. Another big facet or big reason would be the fact that there is a data warehouse, as we saw earlier, and that you can pull in those disparate data sources, which we all know nonprofits tend to have several at least, like payroll, ERP, something like the Razor's Edge or some other donor management system, grant management systems, things like that. All those wonderful systems that Brenda showed on that opening diagram. So all of those can be brought into the SQL Server. It's an Azure SQL Server based data warehouse. And then of course, that means you can combine financial and operational data, not just financial data. And then of course, you can also use all that data to budget by. The budgeting portion of or planning portion of Solver saves to the data warehouse as well, so that you can combine all that data into meaningful reports, which we're going to be seeing today, as well as dashboards. So let's just start off by taking a quick look at a couple of finance reports that we have kind of prompted for you. Of course, you're probably interested in a statement of activities. So this is an example of a statement of activities without and with donor restrictions. Again, very much Excel-based reporting, where I've got the report was developed in Excel, so the same kind of functionality uploads here for your end users to consume, so I can expand or contract different areas. Maybe I'm interested in this particular number here, and I can right-click that and then drill into the detail. So now I'm seeing the detail behind the numbers, and you have full control over what that detail is. In this case, departments, things like that, but it could be grant-related detail, etc. Another example of that might be, even though we're all doing the with and without donors now, sometimes internally, or actually oftentimes internally, we're still reporting the old FAS 117 unrestricted TRPR type of report. So of course we can create that or utilize that report as well. In terms of the kind of the cool thing here, if I go back to the report templates, is I can create my own categories. So I can put these reports and templates in different categories. So for example, I'm going to uncheck financial, click on dashboards. And the really cool thing here is that we talked about an integration to Microsoft Power BI for dashboards, or what's technically known as data visualization. But you can also kind of utilize that Excel-based functionality where we can leverage Excel itself and its charting and graphing capabilities. So a couple of examples I have here are, if you're a membership-based organization, then this might be an interesting dashboard for you, where it's showing us in this case, and also I can take these reports and dashboards and make them larger, so it consumes more of the space here. So I've got actual my membership, target membership, actual versus target membership, my member dues, members by region, new member trend versus my target, new members versus dropped members, and then maybe some risks. Maybe I've developed some categories by region as well. I'm gonna close that guy out there, and we can go over to, and speaking of that snapshot that Brenda showed on the PowerPoint here, that's the grants dashboard we're talking about. So I can click on that grants dashboard here, and similar scenario going on there related to grants, where we can show a large number of KPIs, charts, graphs, things like that. So as this populates here, we'll see that it's showing things like my trend of grants granted versus unencumbered amounts, my grant revenue. So grant versus the amount requested versus what I actually received. What are my top 5 awarded grants by amount in a pie chart over here? If I scroll over, I can see my grant requests by staff. I've got my staff members here. If I pull this down a little bit, I can see my dollars spent per program, my new grants requests versus my declines, my trend by program spend, and grant metrics. So these are some examples, again, of those kind of, frankly, Excel-based type of graphing and charting, which you can easily leverage just out of the box. Now, if you take that one step further and leverage the pre-built integration, I forget to mention that when I was talking about bringing in that disparate data as well, is Solver, another advantage is Solver has a large number of pre-built integrations to ERPs, CRM type solutions, Power BI, and also the ability to bring in data from things like Excel and CSV. So I just thought I'd show you a quick smattering of an example of Power BI based data visualizations or dashboards. So this kind of is our NFP financial analysis. And by the way, Solver also has a number of these pre-built Power BI dashboards. So if you do have a subscription already to Power BI and you want to integrate it to Solver, then we can leverage those pre-built dashboards to get you quickly up and running. So here we're looking at a number of different things, but we can also filter. Maybe I want to see Q2 and specifically Q2 for 2021. So you'll see as I click on those filters, it's filtering the dashboard real time for me. This next dashboard, again, is really kind of membership. I focused on 2. I know there's a lot of different sub niches of nonprofits out there. We've also got education and the like, but I focused on a couple. So membership being one of them. So here I can see maybe my number of members by type, new members versus dropped, number of members, and dues by month, dues by city and state, populating in kind of this bubble format here, and an area chart down here. And again, I can start filtering this, like maybe I want to see Queensland. So as I click that, it starts dropping that or filtering by Queensland, and then I want to filter basically into Brisbane here, and I'm filtering even further down on that one. And then the final Power BI dashboard I have to show you is, on the left side here, we've got basically our event-based reporting. So I'm looking at my annual conference, lunch and learn, the golf tournament, maybe some end of year training, and I can look at that in various formats over here. And then over to the right is really my grant-based reporting, things like my grant amounts by program, grant amount ratio, my encumbered by program. And again, as I select these things, it's going to filter. So if I want to, go for the welfare for all grant, then I can see, it's filtering based upon that, and so on and so forth. So that's the Power BI aspect of it. If I go back over to my system here, and we take a look at a couple of let's see here, report templates. And I'm going to go to my report templates, and I'm going to filter by my input forms. So these are my budget input forms. Again, the beauty of Solver is because they use Excel as the front end report writer. Basically, once you understand how to write a report, the templates are all built in Excel as well. So you understand how to build a template. Often I get the question by clients or prospects, hey, we do this for our budgeting in Excel. Can you do that in Solver? And pretty much the answer is yes, because you're leveraging Excel already. And so we're just, we're also leveraging Excel over in Solver. So then again, once you save those reports or input templates, and those automatically push to Solver into the cloud here, so that we can run, for example, our assumptions. Now, again, the big difference between what's the difference between using Excel and using Solver? Well, a big difference is when I put in my assumptions here, for my FICA, SUTA, FUTA, things like that, my capital, maybe my grants, whatever might be, makes sense to me. When I save the data that I've put into this template, it saves to the data warehouse. And that's one of the major differences. It's not just saved to an Excel spreadsheet, it's saved to the data warehouse, where then that becomes consumable data by other input templates. For example, if I have a personnel input template, it might pull in the FICA and the FUTA, the SUTA numbers based upon my assumptions. Speaking of the budget model and the personnel type of thing, here's an example of how we might have our personnel on the rows here. And then we're saying, well, for this person, for grant run one, we're leveraging 50% of that person here. And maybe under that grant, we've got a project where they're spending, 48% of their time, and maybe another project where they're spending another 2% of our time. So now we can see here, we've got the green light, we've allocated 100% of their salary accordingly. And again, I'm going to save this to the data warehouse, so then it becomes part of all of my budgeting, not only budget input for other input templates, but my reporting as well. Another example here, if we pop back over here, again, if you're like a membership organization, maybe you want to do some planning by member, your members' numbers. So here I'm pulling up an example of a membership planning form where we can leverage this and again save this to the data warehouse, where I would also like to iterate here that if you're seeing something here that either doesn't make sense or, oh, this looks great, but I'd also like to add such and such, really no problem, because what we do is we edit this out. We hit the edit button here in Solver. That opens up the Excel, the same input template in Excel, and now we can make those modifications. Once we hit save in Excel, just like you would on any standard Excel form, but instead of it saving to your local drive or something like that, when you hit save, then it imports it or uploads it to the Solver cloud here, so that then you can rerun this report, and now you've got those new lines in there. So this is just an example of how I'm throwing in the number of members, the retention rate, the fee, the dues, things like that, and then it's popping out my retained members. When you see stuff that's like yellow here, that means it's an inputable area, if that's a word. These areas here that are typically white are calculated areas. So once again, those formulas that you and I are all familiar with creating in Excel, if you've created a formula in the Excel report or the Excel input template, and then you port it up here, that's what's leveraging those calculations. So a lot of other corporate performance management solutions, or FP&A solutions, they leverage their own formula process there. And once again, the beauty from my perspective anyway is that you don't have to relearn someone else's way of doing formulas. You know Excel because you've probably used it all of your career. And so it's just whatever Excel formulas you're used to doing in there, you go ahead and input those into the form, upload them to Solver, and they're available here. The other thing is, I'm going to pop over to my other system here just quickly to show you some other examples here. I'm going into an input template here. This is for other expenses. And again, you'll see how it looks much like Excel. Now, if I don't want the columns and the rows to show, I can just click this button here, takes that away. If you feel more comfortable, or your end users feel more comfortable, they can click that and easily show that. And once again, I can leverage those levels and things that we're used to in Excel. But I'm going to focus down here on this guy right here, office supplies, other supplies. So just like Excel, oh, and by the way, if I scroll to the right here, this is all easy to do. Pull in your actuals because you just design this in Excel, and then now you're easily pulling in your actuals from like last year or this year. So those can be set to the side. Pretty much anything you want over there, you can easily build into the form. And then over here, I've got kind of to the right, I've got that running tally as I'm inputting, just like in Excel. $100 or $10 here, $20 here, $30 here, maybe 100 here, and you'll see it's tallying that up as I go along. And I'm just typing in these amounts, hitting tab, just like I would in Excel. So once again, very user-friendly and very familiar. However, I can also click this guy, the spreading and line item details here. I'm going to roll this up so we can see that line we are on. So there's that 67020. I see that we're in 67020 other supplies here. I see that we can also pull in comparable data, maybe historical data from the last 2 years, that type of thing. And then I can use the abilities to spread to my main line. So maybe I'm putting in $12,000 and I want to spread that evenly. I hit the spread button. Notice how that spreads across there evenly, and it inputted on my line item up here in my main input template. Now I'm just going to delete that to show you one other super cool feature, according to my perspective anyway, and that is perhaps on your chart of accounts, you're tracking this down to other supplies, but you don't want to really get too granular on your COA, right? But maybe for planning purposes, you do. You want to say, well, yeah, but I want to break this out to, toner, paper, things like that. So we're sort of breaking out this to additional level of detail. And so maybe here I'm saying I've got, $6,000 worth of toner. Again, I'm going to spread that evenly across that toner line. Notice it feeds up to the main line and then up to my input form. And then on the paper, perhaps I'm saying, well, that's great, but I want to use a different spreading formula or capability for that. So I can use those historical pieces that I pulled in here as well. Maybe use the historical trend there, but I can also design my own. So maybe I'm going to do a quarterly here, quarterly spread. So now notice that it spread that over quarterly. That's populated up to the main line, which is then populated up to my input form. Again, I'm going to hit the save data there, and that's saved into my my data warehouse and then available for reporting purposes. I'm going to finish up here really quickly. with showing you the workflow capabilities here. Really quite straightforward, very easy to create new workflows because I can give it a name, have a to and from date, so I can set that for reporting purposes, look at assign a reviewer and approver. Then I come in here and simply select my templates that I've got out here. I can dictate what the parameters are on those templates, which departments we're using, which forecast model or scenario we're using. I can let the user decide. I can select which users get access to these guys for this particular workflow. And even down here, I can say, well, for Brendan, I'm going to go into personnel and I'm actually going to choose his department for him, override that so he can only see department 200 there. And then I'm going to publish this. Once you've published these guys, you can easily see the status. For example, I can see here if I click on status, nothing in new, but in progress. We've got Joe User working on other expenses. Joe User finished up this travel model, pushed it over to Todd, and now we're waiting for Todd to approve this, and then finally it'll move into the completed piece. So very easy from that perspective. Once someone gets assigned to a workflow, this is what it looks like from their perspective. Here's my workflow. Maybe I want to drill into this guy and work on this particular template. Again, it's just that template that we saw here. I'm working on the goals. Cool thing too is we can have an activity log here and we can put in comments. The system will actually track the status, so they'll make auto comments in there, and everything over here is reportable. So we can even report on those comments because everything is being stored to that data warehouse, that's Azure SQL Server based data warehouse. And then last but not least, because I know we're running short of time here, this process manager is really cool. So there are a number of templates that you can use. I think there's something like in the neighborhood of 9 here that you can start using. So it gets you kind of started, but they're super easy to configure. You can see I've created like one to even use as a month-end closing. But a great example here is a monthly reporting and analysis where you're just kind of going through. And by the way, I can assign these to different members on my team. And I can see who is assigned to each one of those members. I can add dates here, but I can also add links. So I'm just going through and running through, like maybe the first thing I'm going to do, or in this case, the fourth thing I'm going to do is run my monthly reconciliation report. Notice it opened a new window for that. And it is now running that. Let me just cancel out of here and try that again. So it's running that report over in a new tab for me so I can see that reconciliation report. By the way, this is an example of one of those templates that kind of comes out of the box. It's showing me where I have issues with monthly reconciliations. Back in my CFO days, this would have been super cool to have. Really draws my attention to the areas that need my attention. I don't have to look at every individual line. Point being, once I've reviewed this particular report, then I come back here, mark the task off, go on to my eliminations inputs, my AR, AP aging, things like that, my financial package, et cetera, and so forth. So that then I'm just at the end of this run, I'm like, okay, cool. Now I'm done with what I've done, with what I need to do on my monthly reporting and analysis, and I can track where people are, doing. If they've done their tasks, how many are completed of those tasks, and ultimately, what percentage of that process is complete. For example, here's that process we were looking at, and I can see I'm 25% complete. So I'm going to pause at that point and then turn this back over to someone else. I think Tracy, for you to share the PowerPoint.
Perfect.
Todd,
Thank you, Todd.
you sure make it look easy.
Thanks. It's actually pretty easy to do. I gotta find my panelists here. I see attendees. And Tracy, I think you can also take charge of that as well. Yes. There we go.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Todd. And I'll throw it back to you, Brenda.
Awesome. So Thank you, Todd, for pulling that all together and giving us a lightning fast demonstration of some of the capabilities that are available in Solver. So as you're thinking about embarking on an upgrade to your FP&A solution, I just wanted to give a couple of common pitfalls we see with clients. And the first one is, we've all heard it: garbage in, garbage out. Don't make the mistake of duplicating your existing process and putting it into a system. Getting a system is an opportunity to take a look at the process and see how it can be better, how it can be smoother for the organization, how it can be faster, more effective, less iterations, and more meaningful and impactful with those metrics that are most important to the decision makers throughout the organization. Oftentimes we get involved in an implementation project and people just want to take their existing Excel spreadsheets and put them in the system. So I would say it always goes back to that strategy, to the roadmap, determining what your desired outcome is and not necessarily how you're going to get there, because we'll be able to help you determine that. Avoid the short-term thinking. Don't invest in a system to solve an immediate now problem that's never going to repeat. Invest in it for the organization and your strategic trajectory. It's very often that we see clients want to do a phased implementation to get it up and running just so they can do the current budgeting process. And then as time goes on, start building in those KPIs, building up the dashboards, thinking about different ways that you can present, refine, and analyze the data. Go beyond the finance team. I think one of the most valuable things that I did as a client when I was embarking on my own FP&A search was reach out to everybody throughout the organization that received reporting from us as a finance team, and ask them which reports they found helpful, which ones they didn't use, and which ones they needed to modify significantly to be able to meet their needs. I was horrified by the amount of reports we were producing that nobody looked at or cared about. And they were, of course, the most time-consuming ones. That's the way it goes. So thinking about what do people need and or want. Some things might not be financial metrics. They might be more operational. But how can you give them operational and financial metrics by combining them into a data warehouse and pulling in all those various data sources. And then resisting the one and done approach. So make sure you're building up the internal capabilities, identifying rock stars and other departments to help you out and make sure that you're addressing it. And then final slide here. Just in closing, these are some of the things we have discussed.
Yeah, we can go straight into Q&A.
Yeah, and in terms of questions, I did see one question in the chat I wanted to address live, and that was about integrations with existing ERP and financial systems. There is currently a pre-built integration for Dynamics 365 F&O, as well as Dynamics, as well as Business Central, BC, and Sage Intacct and Microsoft GP are on the way. So things to think about if you are using any of those common systems. We do have a roadmap for that kind of stuff as well. I saw a couple in the chat that are using Financial Edge and others. We're always happy to do custom integrations for any system. So let us know how.
I want to clarify something there, though, Brenda. There are pre-built integrations already to Sage Intacct and GP. There's just not the quick starts.
Gotcha. That's a great clarification. Thank you, Todd.
You bet.
Okay.
Great. Well, yeah, I'll wrap it up here. I appreciate everyone joining us today on the webinar. We will be sending out this recording as well as the PowerPoint slide deck, so you guys can review that, share it with your team. We have our contacts here if you guys need to get in touch with Brenda, Todd, or Terry. Again, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed our presentation today. Thank you, Brenda, and thank you, Todd, and as well as Terry.